Hi everyone, and welcome to Exploring the Build. If you just found this place, then welcome, and if you're returning, I'm glad to have you back. I'm Alex, and this is my channel where I explore and theory craft different character builds for Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. Today, we are doing a quick build. We'll be exploring a briefly summarized build for D&D, and as always with quick builds, if there's ever one build in particular that you'd like to see me explore in the future, be sure to let me know in the comments below. For the concept of our quick build today, we are going to try to build a Fateweaver. Essentially, what I mean by that is we want a build that has as many options as possible to change or re-roll the d20, whether that's for us or our allies to use to be able to re-roll and hopefully get a better result that we actually want, or for us to use against the DM to force them to re-roll when they get a result that's good for them. This build has actually been around for a little while, since a lot of its support has existed in the base player's handbook. However, with all the various other books that have been released since then, there have been a few more interesting features that have been added. So we're going to take a look at all of those today to see just how many we can pick up in a single build. Starting off our build in character creation, we are a halfling. As a halfling, we right away gain our first Fateweaver ability, and that is Halfling Lucky. With Halfling Lucky, pretty much any time we roll a 1 on the d20, we can roll again. It won't be every single instance, but it is most of them, including ability checks, saving throws, attack rolls, all that stuff. Depending on our subrace of Halfling, we can also get some other bonuses, such as to hiding or poison resistance, but I'll let you pick between those, since they don't affect our Fateweaving ability too much. For our background, nothing's really too important, so feel free to pick your favorite. And then for our stats, we do want to use the optional rules in Tasha's Cauldron of Everything in order to reassign our bonuses. We're going to want to put a +2 into Intelligence and a +1 into Dexterity, and then after point by, we're going to want the following ability scores: 9 Strength, 15 Dexterity, 14 Constitution, 16 Intelligence, 12 Wisdom, and 10 Charisma. You can feel free to swap around the Wisdom and Charisma if you really want to. They may need to flip anyways, depending on multiclassing, but I'll get to that later. Starting into the actual level breakdown of our build now, I'm going to actually do things a little differently with this quick build. We're just going to look at when and how we pick up each of our Fateweaving abilities. The actual level breakdown is pretty much going to be a solid 20 levels in Wizard, though technically we could go like 18 and then 2 levels into a different class. But like I said, I'll get to the multiclassing later on. With that said, knowing that we're going to be a wizard, starting right away at level 1, we gain our first Fateweaving ability, and that is the Silvery Barb spell. Silvery Barb says that as a reaction, which we can take when a creature that we can see within 60 feet of ourselves succeeds on an attack roll, ability check, or saving throw, we can magically distract the creature, turning that success into an actual reroll that has to use the lower roll, so essentially giving them disadvantage. Then we can choose a different creature that we can also see within range, which could also be ourselves, and we get to give that creature advantage on the next attack roll, ability check, or saving throw they make within a minute. That's not even concentration, it's just a debuff for one creature and a buff for ourselves. If your DM is anything like my DM, then they are going to be very pissed off that you took this spell because it's just so worthwhile. Our second Fateweaver ability comes in at level 2 when we get to pick our subclass. Here, we're going to choose to be a Diviner Wizard, though technically Chronergist from Explorer's Guide to Wildmount could work as well. But the reason I picked Diviner Wizard is because the Portent ability is usually just straight up better than a reroll. What we get to do with Portent is roll 2 d20s at the end of a long rest, and at any point in time until the end of our next long rest, we can just replace any attack roll, saving throw, or ability check made by us or a creature that we can see with one of these rolls instead. Our next Fateweaving ability comes in at level 3 when we get second level spells, and here we can pick up the second level Divination spell, which is also a Dunamancy spell, so from Explorer's Guide to Wildmount, and that is Fortune's Favor. Fortune's Favor is a really interesting spell because it's more of a setup spell rather than like an in-combat spell. It takes a minute to cast, and then it lasts for an hour without concentration. The caveat is that it does require a pearl worth at least 100 GP that gets consumed, so we're going to need a lot of those if we want to reliably cast this spell over and over again. But once we do cast it, it's pretty nice. We pick either ourselves or a creature within a range of 60 feet of us, and then for the next hour, When that creature makes an attack roll, an ability check, or a saving throw, they can just cancel the spell to roll an additional d20 and choose which of the d20s to use. They can also do the same thing when an attack roll is made against them, in which case they can roll another d20 to hopefully allow that attacker to possibly miss. This spell also says that if the original d20 roll has advantage or disadvantage, this extra d20 from Fortune's Favor gets rolled after the other advantage or disadvantage, meaning it's technically like a super advantage or disadvantage if you want to think of it that way. Just a third d20 on top of two others. At level 4, we gain our first ability score improvement / feat, and here we also gain our 4th Fateweaving ability. We're going to just take the lucky feat, and if your DM is again like my DM, they absolutely hate this feat, at least from a DM's perspective. We gain 3 luck points, and then whenever we make an attack roll, ability check, or saving throw, we can spend one of those luck points to roll an additional d20. We can then choose which of those d20s that we actually use for the roll. We can also spend a luck point when an attack roll is made against us, rolling the new d20 and choosing whether the attacker uses their actual roll or ours. And that's where the DM usually gets a little upset, because that just means we can completely cancel their critical hits, unless we're really unlucky. After picking up the lucky feat, our next Fateweaving ability doesn't show up for a while. This build is very top heavy in terms of when we get these abilities to change or reroll the d20 on ability checks, saving throws, and attacks. Our next feature doesn't show up until level 8, and that is our next ability score improvement / feat, and we're going to pick up Bountiful Luck. Bountiful Luck is a halfling specific racial feat from Xanathar's Guide to Everything. And it says that we can share our halfling lucky trait, sort of. When an ally we see within 30 feet of us rolls a 1 on the d20 for an attack roll, ability check, or saving throw, we can use our reaction to let that ally re-roll their die. The ally must then use the new roll. Same thing that we have. When we use this ability though, we can't use our own lucky racial trait before the end of our next turn. However, there's no limit on how often we do it. It's just that we have to give up our reaction and then give up our lucky racial trait. It's really nice to save us some spell slots if our allies that are within 30 feet of us and do happen to roll a 1. That way we don't have to use the silvery barbs, they don't have to spend Fortune's Favor, and we wouldn't have to spend one of our luck points. Our next Fateweaving ability doesn't show up until level 12, so we're starting to get a little bit more dispersed between when we're picking up these features. There admittedly may be some spells that are higher level that I haven't really looked at or have slipped my mind that also have features similar to what we're trying to look for, which are rerolls on attacks, ability checks, or saving throws. However, assuming that we've already picked up the best spells that already do that, we're just looking at other features like feats or class features for now. I will say as well that since this next Fateweaving ability is another feat, and it comes in at level 12 when we get our next ability score improvement or feat, it actually might be worthwhile switching out the feat for just a +2 to our intelligence, since we are a wizard. However, for what it's worth for our theory crafting, we'll say that we're picking up another feat here, and we're going to pick up Second Chance. Second Chance, like Bountiful Luck, is another halfling-specific racial feat from Xanathar's Guide to Everything. It's a half feat, and it increases our dexterity, constitution, or charisma by 1 to a maximum of 20, so we're going to use it to round off our dexterity at 16. Also says that when a creature we see hits us with an attack roll, we can use our reaction to force that creature to reroll. Once we use the ability, we can't use it again until we roll initiative or finish a rest, so it's mostly a once per combat feature, but it's still really awesome. It doesn't use a spell slot or a luck point, so we can save those features for later on. Our next Fateweaving ability comes right away at level 14, and that is that we get an improved Portent feature from the Diviner Wizard subclass. We can now roll 3 d20 when we're rolling our Portent die instead of 2, and we'll have 3 d20 to spend throughout the day. For our last 2 ability score improvements / feats, we'll probably just say that we're improving our intelligence by +2 twice to cap it off at 20. So now that we have about 7 different methods of weaving fate relatively reliably, or at least re-rolling d20s, or even just exchanging the d20 number straight up, it's time to talk about multiclassing. For multiclassing, we could reasonably multiclass into something like Clockwork Soul Sorcerer, or the Unearthed Arcana Fate Cleric. The Clockwork Soul Sorcerer gains the feature Restore Order, which is just a reaction they can spend when a roll has advantage or disadvantage within 60 feet of them. They can do it a number of times equal to their proficiency bonus, and it only requires a reaction, no spell slot or anything like that. So that's not too bad of a feature. As well, the Fate Cleric from Unearthed Arcana, which is possibly going to get a full official release in the new Planescape book that's eventually going to come out from D&D, though I don't know if that's 100% confirmed. Even just the Unearthed Arcana version, though, would still get us a feature that would be pretty nice to use if we're allowed to use it, and that is their Channel Divinity. Their Channel of Divinity is called Strands of Fate, and it's a concentration ability for a minute that just acts like we were concentrating on a spell, and it just says that for the entire duration, whenever a creature we can see makes an attack roll or ability check, we can just choose to give that attack roll or ability check advantage or disadvantage. Now, while both of these features are pretty nice, the reason I'm suggesting that we might not actually want to go with them is because of the level 18 wizard feature, and that is Spell Mastery. Spell Mastery says that we can just choose a first level and a second level spell to just never use spell slots again when we cast them. And for us, that would pretty much just be Silvery Barbs and Fortune's Favor. Being able to just cast Silvery Barbs and Fortune's Favor at their base levels for free constantly is awesome because neither one benefits from being upcasted. The Spell Mastery with Silvery Barbs kind of makes the rest of our Fateweaving abilities a complete joke. We're now just using our reaction to cast Silvery Barbs, unless we really want to shield or counterspell or something else, because that's just a better Fateweaving ability than any of the other features that we have. Similarly, Fortune's Favor would then only be limited by the amount of pearls we have to actually spend on the spell. We could give all of our allies a Fortune's Favor roll for an hour, and as soon as that hour is done, just do it again. It's probably more worth it to just take Spell Mastery rather than actually multiclass into a different class, since our reaction will be spoken for, and they're just better options. With all that said, let's look at what we have so far. We have lots of Fateweaving, and a lot of that Fateweaving can be used really reliably at early levels, and at level 18, we can take Spell Mastery for Silvery Barbs and Fortune's Favor, and just use those as much as we want. For our actual Fateweaving options, we have about 7 different features that allow us to just reroll or change the d20. We have Silvery Barbs, we have Fortune's Favor, we have Portent from Divine Wizard, and actually we have Portent Plus at level 14, where we can just exchange 3 rolls to whatever we want. We have the Lucky Feat, which is another free 3 rerolls that doesn't even require a reaction or a spell slot. And likewise, I should say, the Portent ability also doesn't require a reaction, which is what makes it really, really powerful. And then, for the lower levels, we have Bountiful Luck and Second Chance, where we do have to use a reaction, but it saves us our luck points and it saves us our spell slots. So while we're not going to be using those all the time, every now and then, if we want to keep one of our other Fateweaving resources for later, we can use those feats instead. The one main regret of this build is that our reaction is really going to be spoken for. It's going to be hard to counterspell or shield when we would rather just change a d20 roll to make it like whatever is happening didn't happen. But beyond that though, we have lots of control and in fact a little bit of support, given that we can just boost our allies in what they're doing by letting them re-roll with a pseudo sort of advantage, or just changing their rolls to something really good with our Portent abilities. Overall though, we are certainly a Weaver of Fate. Let me know what you thought of the build, or what you would do to change to get closer to this idea of a Fateweaver character, or someone who can just have the max amount of reroll and d20 changes in a single build. Thank you so much for coming on the journey with me, and I hope to see you in the next one.